The American election is days away and the whole world knows it. There's in person, early voting, mail in ballots, but why can't we vote online? Let's listen to Cleo Abrams explain in this video.
This year, more people will likely vote than at any time in history. It's being called the ultimate election year, when countries with half the world's population can vote for their leaders. This is a big test of democracy that requires millions of polling places and billions of ballots.
Voting is integral to a democracy, and this is definitely a pivotal year with much of the world having elections. Why does America vote the way it does, though?
But voting's not always easy. In some places, people need to travel long distances or wait in long lines. In the United States, we vote on a Tuesday, so sometimes people need to take off from work. I'm very excited to go vote. And I'm wondering, wouldn't it be easier if I could just... Why can't I vote online?
We basically live most of our lives online. So why can't we vote online?
Over the past few months, I've been talking to voting and security experts to try to answer that question. And it turns out that the answer is more controversial, complicated, and high stakes than I could have ever imagined.
Online voting.
Online voting.
Online ballots.
Online voting system.
Our adversaries are extremely talented.
Vulnerable to cyber attacks. It's simply not secure enough.
They have unbounded amounts of hackers, computers, and cash.
Faster and easier.
More convenient and boost voter turnout.
With total security for your vote.
Might be the future of elections.
What a huge question. I can't wait for her breakdown.
One of the surprising origins of online voting is actually space. In 1997, the US state of Texas added an option for online voting to let this astronaut vote from the Mir space station.
We fill out this application, the ballot is encrypted to us, we send it back down, and they record the vote.
This tradition of allowing astronauts to vote from space is still happening. The 2 American astronauts that are trapped on the ISS right now are planning to vote this way.
What? Online voting started in space? How amazing. Will this revelation be the foot in the door technique that gets us all to vote online? I don't know, we'll see.
And now, all of these states allow options for online voting for military and overseas citizens. All in, about 300,000 Americans voted online in 2020. Around the world, this map isn't exhaustive, but all of these countries have options for people to vote online to varying degrees. But again, it's mostly available to people with special circumstances. It's not available to everybody. In most of the world, voting looks like this. In India, for example, the world's largest democracy, people go to polling stations and then vote using electronic machines like this. And then election officials paint their fingers with ink that lasts around 2 weeks. This helps prevent fraud. Or in Gambia, for example, people place marbles into colored drums like this. Or in the United States, here's me voting for the first time when I was 19. I love that picture because I got all dressed up. When I go this year, I'll mark a paper ballot, put it into the machine like this, and my vote will likely be counted using an optical scan ballot counter, which records the vote by reading the ballot like one of those Scantron tests you might have taken at school. Importantly, the physical paper ballot is kept as a backup in case of an audit or a recount. Many countries do something similar to this process.
It's so interesting to see how voting around the world differs, especially the ranges of techniques used. It seems to me like the most advanced nation, America, if that's what you want to believe we are, has an archaic form of voting, especially with the internet being so popular. But is that just a false notion that I have?
The totals then get sent to a central office which reports unofficial results. That's what we see on TV on election night.
So this is the map right now.
Too close to call.
We can now project the winner of the presidential race.
The official results can sometimes come weeks later after election officials have had a chance to count all the ballots and audit the results. But only about 2/3 of eligible US citizens usually vote. Compared to other countries, that's not great.
The turnout in a process that seems integral to democracy is concerning, to say the least.
The biggest dream North Star of online voting is to help increase the number of people who vote. We don't know that it'll do that, but it would be enough, in my mind, if it just made it easier for people to participate in their own democracies. If and only if we can do it safely. The biggest thing to remember here about online voting is that the stakes couldn't be higher. We're talking about the most important, well-armed countries in the world, choosing who runs them and trying to affect who runs their enemies. This is cybersecurity on a whole other level.
Lowering the barrier of entry and voting seems like a no-brainer, but the security aspect is definitely a huge hurdle.
If you're one of the select people voting online in the US now, you often have to email or fax your ballot. And the cybersecurity experts that I spoke to were very clear. That is not a system that you want a whole country using. But this is huge if true. So let's imagine. What would good online voting actually take? This is Dr. Joe Canary and Dr. Josh Benelow, who are both cybersecurity experts with over 20 years' experience working on online voting. They're going to be our guides to understand why this problem is so hard and how we might be able to solve it. How hard is this problem really?
It is a difficult problem. We don't have all of the problems solved or well enough solved. I usually will list 4 basic challenges to voting online.
And the first is credentials.
If you're voting online, you have to have credentials of some sort, digital credentials.
I know this scares people, but an online digital ID may be something that we have in the future.
There are places that have this. In Estonia, every citizen gets an electronic ID card, which they use for healthcare, taxes, and since the early 2000s, online voting. When an Estonian goes to vote, they use their ID card to validate their identity, and then cast their vote.
This makes even more sense with the rise of bots and AI characters.
In Europe, national ID cards are a thing and they've been around forever.
It's like a YubiKey if you've ever used one. It's like a tiny little USB drive you plug into your computer to verify your identity. Each YubiKey is a physical device that has a unique ID, like Google's Authenticator that's a random number generator if you've ever used that before.
But in the US,
In America, there has always been an extreme resistance to the rollout of a national ID system.
Social security numbers?
You have a number, that is true, and that number sort of represents the foundation of what could be, the first step of 1,000 to get to a national ID card. From a technical standpoint, but from a political standpoint, it's simply a no-go.
This isn't just technical challenges, it's political ones too.
Technical and political challenges that I believe we could overcome, but time will tell.
The second challenge is both technical and political: coercion.
If I'm using a phone to vote and I log into the phone, like with my facial ID, I can just then hand that to someone else and they can vote. So you can't do that in a polling place.
Imagine your boss says that they'll give you $500 to vote for a particular candidate. It's crucial that your vote is a secret, and not just that you vote in secret, but also that you don't have a receipt that you could then take back to your boss and say, ka-ching.
When we didn't have secret ballot, we had lots of vote selling and vote buying and manipulation of voters.
Estonia deals with this by allowing voters to recast their vote as many times as they want online, with the last recorded vote being counted. So if someone forced you to vote a certain way, you could re-vote later. We think of other things like online banking as being secret, but by this standard, they're not at all.
This is definitely the most concerning aspect to me. The biggest exploit is humans. In cybersecurity, human engineering, or manipulating human beings is always the strongest point to attack. No matter what we do or what systems we put in place, social engineering will always be a huge factor.
We think of other things like online banking as being secret, but by this standard, they're not at all.
In banking, you must not be secret. You're logging into a website, and every transaction you make has to be part of your public ledger shared with the bank.
You can see all of your transactions afterward, and your bank can see them too. Online voting is not like online banking.
Online banking seems very similar to blockchain, where all of your transactions are stored.
That brings us to the third problem with online voting: client malware.
The hackers,
data breach,
major data breach,
stole private information,
paralyzed by ransomware attacks.
But first I gotta tell you about it.
Hey, I love you, Cleo, but I'm not getting paid for this. Maybe if I was getting paid, I'd put an ad in here.
Now, back to client malware.
As soon as you go to internet voting, that means every voter's device in the entire election is part of the election's infrastructure.
For a hacker, that's a lot of doors to get through.
And so your attack surface, is what we call it in cybersecurity, has grown many orders of magnitude larger, and suddenly you have to worry about the bad guys getting into any of those doors.
Yikes.
That's a lot of doors, but maybe one of them has a solution to our problems? I don't know.
The thing most people are worried about here is vote flipping.
I try to vote for A, there's malware on my phone, it casts a vote for B without my knowing it, and there's a vote for B.
But I use my phone to do all kinds of secure things, right? Like, why can't we just build an unhackable system? I bank online, I send encrypted messages, I don't understand yet how voting is different from what I already do.
The principal difference is the ability to confirm that things have been done properly.
And that confirmation is hard because of the secret ballot, right? So the thing that protects us from one problem, coercion, causes another problem, which is confirming your vote is correct.
Seems like a Sophie's choice. The trolley problem at its finest.
But some cybersecurity experts are excited about a way to solve that.
It's called the Benelo Challenge, named after my friend Josh Benelo, who invented it.
Yeah, this Josh Benelo.
Yeah, I can do a demonstration for you of how that works.
I would love that. Yes, please.
I have my trusty deck of cards here.
First, I get to choose to vote red or black. So I vote red.
So I am going to show you this, and I claim for you that this is an encryption of a red vote.
Now I can submit my vote.
Or you can say, you want to check.
I want to check.
Okay, there it is.
And I can repeat this process as much as I want. Black.
Would you like to keep it or would you like to check it?
I'd like to check it.
Okay.
Red.
Okay.
Challenge. Thank you. Black.
Okay.
Challenge it.
Okay.
Thank you. Black. Red. Black. I could do this all day.
I promise you will get bored soon.
What we're doing is testing the system, making sure that if there was a bug or a hack that was flipping votes, I'd notice. And when I've done it enough times,
Keep it or challenge it.
you know, I trust you now. I can submit my final encrypted vote. This doesn't just make people feel like the system is working. It mathematically proves that it is.
Statistics are very, very much on our side. You can imagine a large election, 100 million voters. If 1% of voters actually do a check, as much as 100 votes being flipped, of course, the entire election would likely be caught somewhere.
I like this idea. Each voter being a part of a system to verify that the system is working.
In practice, my encrypted vote is a sequence of numbers. And at the end of an election, all of those numbers would be recorded. So I can see my number. Not how I voted, but the fact that the vote I submitted went through.
Very similar to how blockchain works.
Great, so we solved it, right? Absolutely not. Because if you do find a problem, what then? If finding a problem on your phone calls an election into question, unfortunately, a lot of people would do that deliberately.
If the fact that I have malware on my phone causes an election to be overturned or upset, then there are going to be a lot of people who intentionally put malware on their phones.
Incentive to verify that the system is not working efficiently is definitely a problem.
Here's the craziest part to me about all of this. Actually flipping a vote isn't even necessarily the biggest cybersecurity risk. Imagine an enemy just makes it a little bit more annoying for certain groups to vote. That brings us to the fourth and maybe highest stakes challenge with online voting, which is called a denial of service attack. The goal of this type of attack is to overload a system with fake traffic, causing a website to crash or not load properly, or causing an internet outage in certain areas. Even if it just causes a slowdown for a few hours, that could be catastrophic. We know that rain influences voter turnout. This would be basically people creating online weather in only specific places to affect how people vote just enough.
DDoS or denial of service attacks are the main attacks that hackers use. Right now, the Internet Archive is getting DDoSed or was DDoSed, and they had to shut down for a long time, which the Internet Archive archives stuff that happens on the internet. So a lot of companies took advantage of this and erased a little bit of history, which is concerning to say the least. Social media sites like TikTok also prove that a little bit of friction in the system makes people just click off. They don't want you to go away from their site, so when you click on outside links, they make it a little bit slower, which makes you not want to use the site anymore and go back to their site. It's tricky games that they play, which affects our psychology, and it's the same exact instance here.
Slowing down voting. That can change the outcome of an election. What's the acceptable level? Where do we say, well, not too many voters were inconvenienced, so we're going to accept this election?
Our adversaries are extremely talented. They have unbounded amounts of hackers, computers, networks, and cash.
This story is not about your mom's email scammer. This is about nations trying to influence each other's elections. It also touches on the obvious problem of public trust in voting, which is not a technological problem.
There's a lot that goes well beyond technology here. Yes.
And it comes back full circle to people. Humans will always be the biggest exploit. And with other nations trying to impose their will, this is certainly a huge topic.
I came into this story thinking, online voting, this should obviously be a thing. But like many of the stories that we cover, this is a way harder problem to solve than I thought.
We are making progress, but there are unsolved problems.
Lots of constructive folks have done the what if about how might this work, but it's hard.
There is a future where this could work, and that is huge if true. But in the meantime, it's worth remembering how awesome it is to vote in the first place. A lot of people fought for my right to be able to do that, and I feel incredibly grateful. So if you feel that way too, if you can, go vote. No matter what the technology, it's time to make your very human voice heard.
Voting is a huge part of democracy, and you could be that person that steps on the butterfly that changes the whole world in the future. So get out there and vote. If you liked this video and want to see more, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. I'll see you in the next one.